Hello everybody, welcome to HockeyToday.cc. We've got a special surprise for you. We have a bonus track, as it were, for our coach conference, and you see that I am not alone here, and for once I am going to try and shut up as mostly as possible, but we've got our special guest for tonight is Mike Irving from Sport 101 in the UK, and he's going to talk to us about the importance of branding and the importance of social media for when you're starting out as a coach or when you want to build your coaching career. And when it comes to social media, then obviously we need the input from Bernardo Fernandez, the creator and founder of SelfPass, the big guy on social media for hockey. So what can we tell about social media? Then we need to have Bernardo online here. But yeah, because all three of us are pretty much old guys, becoming old guys. Sorry, Bernardo, I'm joining you in there. Yeah, we thought it would be a good idea to have at least one of the youngsters also here present. So the third person there is Sergio Oles from Zaragoza in Spain, member of the EHF youth panel, player and also a coach in Zaragoza. But especially here as one of the younger coaches, so that he can correct us oldies when we start talking about social media. So, well, Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Firstly, really honoured and so excited to be here with all three of you and to be a part of your amazing conference. It's an incredible project, HockeyToday.cc, and yeah, very flattered and honoured to be a part of it today. So firstly, a huge thank you to all of you guys. Yeah, so the topic of social media, I think it's such a fascinating landscape and world to be a part of. And I think for me, having been around it for a little while now and seen various different guises and as you said, having looked up to the likes of Bernardo and what he's done with SelfPass over the years, for me, I really wanted to kind of, could I create something within Sport 101 that had that kind of vibe, that feel, and had that presence more than anything else in the world of hockey. And I think it comes down to a few different things. And I think social media, first and foremost, it's a communication platform. So it's how you can communicate and how you connect with everyone around the world. And I think that's got its real big positives beside it. And it's also got some kind of technically difficult areas, which I think people need to be really aware of. I think obviously from a huge positive point of view, it's being able to connect with so many amazing people from all over the world is just the best thing, in my opinion. I think it can open doors for opportunities as well, if used in the right way. And something which I want to touch on later is like how you can get the most out of it as a coach or as somebody new starting out in setting up your own projects, coaching companies, whatever. I think there's a few things which will kind of really help in that. And I think finally, it's a way of expressing yourself, not only as a brand, but also as an individual. So I kind of want to start with that in how people use it to express themselves and how they use it to present themselves in the world. I think for me, like I said, the biggest positive is if you use it in the right way, it's so valuable for kind of promoting your ideas and your thoughts and your opinions. But I think there has to be a little caveat with that, in that it's not, you need to treat it as if what you say on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, what you do on there needs to reflect how you would be if we were all in a room together, face to face. And I think people get really brave and really big in their thoughts when it's over Twitter or over Facebook, and when they actually get confronted face to face about it, I think they sometimes come up with different opinions. And I think consistency is king. So whatever you're going to show, present, express an opinion about. Not saying you have to agree with everything. That's not the case at all. And I think it's important to disagree. It's important to shed light on situations, whether they're big situations, such as, what's going on in the world today with Black Lives Matter, with, female equality, all those sorts of things. No matter if it's a big, huge world topic like that, or disagreeing with an umpiring decision at a game at the weekend, like, you still need to come across in a rational, normal human being like way. And I think that's where I think people that are passionate about hockey, we all are. If we weren't, we wouldn't be sat here today talking about it. But I think it's making sure that it comes across in a way, like, if your mum or your nan was sat in the room with you, would you be happy saying what you're saying there in front of them? And I think that's a really important thing to kind of flag. And I think the other thing is that, like I say, that consistency. Yes, people change their opinions, change their minds, get swayed one way. That's absolutely fine. But it's not being drastically shifted one way or the other. So actually, I think having that consistency in what you're saying, I think, is massive. The other thing to think about is, like I've already mentioned, is you're selling yourself as a brand, whether that's, Bernardo Fernandez or a Self-Pass or Ernst Bar or HockeyToday.cc, whatever you're doing, you are selling that item, you as an individual or your brand or your company. And if you need to then be also consistent in the beliefs and the philosophies of whatever brand you're attached to. So if your brand is all about being open and honest and creative and warm and friendly and this, that, and the other, yet the presence you put out on social media is negative and like poking at people and that sort of thing, then it produces a clash. So I think people need to be really wary about what they're saying and how that then kind of aligns. Like I say, that's a potential negative, but the positive spin on that is it can actually, if you're connected to other really positive people and organizations and brands and everything else, it's only going to help not only you and the projects that you're working on, but actually it's going to help the hockey community. Because if there's more positivity going around and more people connecting and sharing, supporting and helping each other out, then that's incredible. And that's such a valuable thing. And I've seen it done really, really well. And I think seeing that is just awesome. And I can think of some really amazing. Yo, go for it.
Sorry, can I interrupt you for the first time here, because I think it's a great advice, and that is something that I myself. You gave me a word of praise about the Self-Pass project, which I appreciate a lot, especially coming from you. But what he said now, it's something that I feel that I personally need to handle better, because sometimes I think you have your real coach person or persona, then you have your virtual persona or your project persona, and sometimes you might mix some things or some areas of opinion, they will be a bit gray, and I don't know. So it's also a question. It's a remark for me, but it's also a question for you. And it's like, should we be very conscious about dividing both areas? So my real coaching persona and my social media project or persona, or we also need to get into a state of habit with social media and opinions, easy opinions, that one thing doesn't need to affect the other. Makes sense? This remark?
It makes
you understand
sense.
my point? Yeah.
I don't think it's a case about editing what you do. It's just about being consistent. So I'd like to think that the way I am in real life reflects the way I am on my social, and I'm not editing the way I am in social. That's just the way I am. And I think if you want to be, if you are a certain way, and that's your kind of core beliefs, core values, and that fits then with the projects that you're working in, amazing. Like, that's how it should be. And I'm not saying everybody needs to be, do what I do in the way I would 101. I'm not saying,
Right.
In terms of like that style and that message, because that's me that I put into Sport 101. And actually, if you are, if you are somebody that likes to maybe go against the system and you like to challenge more openly and that's you, then that should reflect in your social media. And it not being like, okay, I want to challenge stuff in real life, and then when you go onto your social, you're not challenging, then people are like, well, what's going on?
Yeah.
That's inconsistent.
Not being real.
Yeah, but
So just
if I can add on that, because I immediately feel attacked if you're talking about personas who are challenging the system or pointing the fingers at the system. I do believe that it is important that if you have or you manage different projects or you are online in social media as yourself, but also as a brand, then you need to be. I guess you do need to be different. I will be, speaking for myself, a lot more outspoken if I am posting on social media as Ernst Baart. I will be critical, but a little bit less outspoken if I do this as Studio Hockey. And I won't be outspoken at all or critical at all if I do this as my HockeyToday.cc project, because that is not about being critical or being that has its own goals, and I do think that obviously you need your social media persona to reflect who you really are, but when you have different roles in life, be it as a brand or an organization, or be it as a private person and a coach who is online, those can also be two different personas online. Yeah, then you need a little bit to adapt your social media presence to what you're presenting at that moment.
I think it's an adaptation, but it's not a completely different hat. I think it's what people don't want is people to look and they'll see that you're attached to Studio Hockey and HockeyToday.cc and you're an individual. Where people get confused and kind of like, well, what's going on is when the messages are vastly different, and that then is the inconsistency that's issue. Sergio, you look like you've.
Yeah, no, I was going to say just what Aaron said, but also it depends on how big the company or the project is, because it's not the same if at Selfas is not the case, but it would be like, okay, his opinions are reflected through this platform, but it's not the same as if you have a company with employees, because maybe some of the people don't think the same way, and you have to have more like a central or neutral point of view on topics, I feel.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and I think, agreed. But I also think you got to be really careful, and I think this is where people put views are their own, and I think that's a really important thing to have in there, because I think it can. People are watching. People aren't stupid. People can see, okay, this is the flavor of this person's social media, and then all of a sudden you're now launching this, which is a very, very different flavor. Yet we've seen what you say, how you are, how you act. That flavor, people are then going to remember that, and that's going to be then the lens that they'll look through. So I think it's paying attention to the lens which people are looking at you through. I think that's the key, really, and not think, okay, well, I've said it on my social, that's not going to have any effect at all on the other projects that I do. And I think that's probably the clarity piece and the consistency piece that I just kind of want to bring up.
Yeah.
But if you allow me, would you if you do not have a brand, but you are just Mike Irving or Ernst Baart, who has his own private worldviews and a private social media presence, but you also have a role as a coach at a certain club with a certain team, maybe even a national team, youth national team or whatever. And sometimes you post as a private person, but sometimes you post as a coach. Like you told before, discussing about an umpire decision before in the game of last weekend, for example. That is different than if I post as a proud father of a son, or I post about something, a political view that I want to share or not share. How do you manage the differences between those roles?
Manage who's seeing what. And I think for your stuff where it's you want to maybe have that freer voice and it not attaching to hockey, then maybe that sits in a different forum and a different space. I have my private Facebook where I will talk about anything, other things, but that's for my friends, my family, and therefore I will share very, different things in that arena. But when I'm on Twitter, that's my hockey arena. And then I will share about hockey. Even though I have Mike Irving on Twitter, I know that that's going to be seen from people all over the world. So that's still my hockey presence. My personal Instagram, my personal Facebook are for me and my friends, and that what gets shared there is very, will look different and will say different things. But at the same time, my message doesn't change. The way I speak doesn't change. I'm still me. I'm still, the way that Bernardo's got to know me over the years and whatever else, that doesn't change. But I am very aware that if I say a certain thing on this, it's going to come across as this. If I say it in the same way on that, it's going to come across in a different way. And I think this is where, moving tact ever so slightly, I think this is where understanding the platforms as an individual and as a brand is massive. And that's something that I've been trying to pay particular attention to and learn about, is that you need to understand that each platform is almost a different language, and you need to learn to speak that language to make things land. So having the same thing on Instagram and Facebook, you can kind of get away with because they're very similar. They're big visuals, everything else. Twitter is a conversation. You're not going to post the same thing. Twitter is about how you gauge, how you chat to people, how you can create maybe a relationship. Like, that's where you can build that on there. Then you've obviously got YouTube and TikTok. I think TikTok is something which I want to learn and get into, because actually it's not just for 14-year-old kids. Actually, there are huge influencers on there in business, in worldwide, and actually that's really important. You've got LinkedIn, which is obviously another social media. It is, and actually you need to be able to speak the right language on the right platform. And I think that is massive. And I think, going back to Bernardo and South Pass, I think they absolutely nailed how they used YouTube back in the day. How they've, over 100,000 followers on Instagram, like absolutely smashing it on there because they're speaking the right language on the right platform. And I think as a coach, you need to understand what your language is and how you're trying to present. So there's a guy just starting out, actually, who I think is going to do an amazing job, called Just Don't Coach. And he's just started out on Instagram, putting some stuff up there. And the language that he's speaking on Instagram is amazing, and it's so good. It's produced really well. It's sharing knowledge, it's fantastic.
So, Mike, sorry to interrupt. I want to interrupt you the less as possible because I want to listen and to learn more than anything. But do you have one or two details from that specific example that you recall that you think that's why this guy is doing such a good job? If it comes from the top of your mind.
So I think the thing that he does really well is he's making a very short, simple video, which has some written takeaway coaching points. So when he's talked about, he's done some upright backhand goal scoring was his latest video that he posted today. And he's put some really clean, clear, simple coaching points on there. Great visual, really nice intro and outro, which is on brand. And we'll talk about brand in a second, because I think that would be really interesting to hear from you, Bernardo, on that, to kind of open that discussion out. But having known the guy for a little bit before, and he kind of approached me, he was like, I want to run this project. Do you think it will go? And I was like, absolutely, just go for it. And I think it's going to land really well. I think it's cool. And I think people should go and check it out.
Sure.
And he doesn't know what I'm saying about this, by the way. This is not
you will not
twisting my arm to like plug this, but
it's good promotion. It's good promotion for him.
But it's I respect what he's trying to do. I think it's really cool.
But is this? Why is he doing this? Is this a coach who wants to make a name as a coach and is going to try social media for this?
I think he has a lot of ideas and wants to share them. And I think it's that sharing piece which is massive. Like, he wants to share. He's got ideas. Yeah, okay. He knows that. I guess he knows that if he does a really good job and he promotes himself well, doors may open for connections, opportunities, whatever, which will happen. You know, if you do a good job in anything in the world, if you're a really good Uber driver, you're going to get, recommended for other drives. So I think it doesn't matter what you do in the world. If you do a good job, people recognize and bring it up. So, yeah. And I think, like I said, he wants to share, he wants to show the ideas that he's got. He's a creative guy, and I think that's where it came about.
Yeah, when you're saying like anything you do in life, you do good enough, like people are gonna recognize it. I think the idea itself is as worth it as the how you present it and how you share it, because maybe you have the best content ever as a coach, but you don't know how to present it in a way that is valuable enough for people. So it's almost worthless, I think.
Yeah. For sure.
100%. I think, Bernardo, it'd be really cool to hear about the branding of Self Pass just for a little bit, because I know from my point of view, when I started Sport 101, I looked up to Self Pass as a brand, and I think it's the way it came across, and it was so kind of innovative and clean and just out there. I think it really inspired me in terms of how I wanted, to create my own brand that could then present its own message in that way. So it'd be cool to hear about that.
Well, not trying to take much time of your spotlight here, because and not going off the topic of coaching, branding, and social media, but just to share some quick ideas from us. I think the main motivation was a bit what you described about that new project. It was just about share something that if we talk about our videos and video content, the main motivation was about to share some stuff that we thought that was like really cool to watch ourselves, and then aesthetically was a pleasure to watch some of the stuff that the boys were doing. So then we started to share that, and then there was a kind of an artistic involvement around that I think was very appealing for us, like the addition of the video, so to add some cool songs that we thought was that became for us like a full video edition was a kind of a art form in a way, and then to sum it up, it started like completely free and organic. Then we started to have some responsibilities, some sponsors, which gave us opportunities to grow and to learn about social media and about certain professional guidelines in a way. And now we transition to a stage where it feels really good that we just want to say and do whatever it feels right for us and for our fans. And I think that feels like freedom in a way, that yes, we have a fan base, we love the engagement, and we love the love we get from the fans, but it feels also that it's more real for them, that we do whatever it feels nice for us, and hopefully they will enjoy it, and hopefully they respect. And so far, that's a bit what we feel. So yeah, it's been a good project. And now about branding, I think what made a big difference for us is at some point we started to understand a lot what our end audience engaged with in terms of days and things, and the kind of, content that people really wanted to see, the kind of language they wanted to see. Our language shifted a little bit, and then we started to communicate in shorter message, really direct messages, in the edge of being I will not say street, because street is it's a word that is very wasted right now, but we like to be in the edge of being like just two friends talking in the street, or two neighbors talking in the street, without being unpolite or without saying anything that you should not say. So now, just to finish my part here, we want to keep on being innovative and cool and disruptive. Also, we like to be seen as a disruptive platform, and yeah, that's our goal now. Yeah.
And I think having that disruptive message is really cool. And I think that's one of the things that kind of drew me to it, because also it was trying to break the mold. It still is breaking the mold, opening new lanes, showcasing what can be done, not only from a skills perspective, but as an entity in itself. It's always changing, it's always moving, and I think that's so cool. And I think a lot of people could take a lot of ideas from what you guys have created.
I think what Sergio said it's very important. What he said about a lot of great ideas are still in a PowerPoint. They never come to light just because you don't dare to, and I think I appreciate all the persons here in the call are not really like that. I think we all dare and we all try, and maybe often you fail, but at least you try, so that's important. But for us, it became very important that the aesthetics and the way we place our visuals and so on was always a big concern for us. So I think that can make a difference as well. The way you because there are a lot of cool videos and there are a lot of cool tricks, but maybe the edition, the people were a bit lazy or didn't want to go further in their edition, or they didn't want to hire a professional or whatever, and then the potential is not fully there, So I think that's important.
If you allow me, why do you think? And I possibly it's a bit of a tricky question, because we're four sitting here talking about this. Why is it that, well, both we do not have a lot of women coaches, but we see, or maybe it's just me and I don't see them, we don't see a lot of female presence as coaches in social media? Is that because my bubble is male?
Could be, and I think the thing on social is it's got some very clever algorithms that sit behind it. So if you naturally drift towards following male coaches or male personalities, your social media content will be going through a stream, and more of that will pop up. So I think people need to be more aware about, actually there are plenty of female coaches out there having a voice and saying things, but actually your social media will be grooved in a way which maybe isn't opening that up. So I think go and find it. Like, it's out there. if I look at my staff at Sport 101, I think I'm probably 60% female coaches. And last year I had, so for me last year out of probably 70 odd coaches, I'd say that, at least 40, I'd say 35 were female, 35, 40 were female. And I think that's, for me, I think there's as many amazing female coaches out there as there are male, and I will just employ the best coaches that I can. Mm-hmm. And I think it's been really, I don't see Sport 101 as sitting in as a male brand or a female brand. It's
but do you really think that is it just okay? I'm seeing not enough or not many female coaches expressing their opinions out there. Yes, that could be because my bubble is a little bit too male and or too white or too European or to whatever. But or is it that they haven't found their voice in this area yet?
I think more are, and I think there are some really good platforms which are getting more female coaches out there and spreading the world of female. So like in the UK we've got Women's Sports Trust, which supports a lot of the female athletes, and I think that's a fun, I had Tess Howard on my podcast the other day, and she's an ambassador for them, and they're doing fantastic work in promoting female athletes and coaches as well. So I think, yes, there's obviously, I think there are probably more male coaches on social. But I think yet was the key word that you used. I think there will be a far bigger presence of female coaches and stuff as more female coaches start to come to the fore. And I think that's not me saying that they haven't been good enough before. I think they have been more than good enough, and I think there should have been far more female coaches in certain positions earlier. But I think society is actually finally breaking down the barriers which should never have been there.
I fully agree with that. If you look at being a young coach and you want to make it a name for yourself. Yeah, obviously you can do that the old-fashioned way, and just by becoming a good coach, having some luck with your team and getting the results and getting noticed. But what can you do on social media to make sure that you also establish a name as a coach?
Share and add value would be my two biggest pieces of advice. Share information, share knowledge. I think if you're out there sharing information and it's not just staying in your little bubble, then I think that helps. And secondly, think about how you can add value to people. So if you want to make a connection, not what can you take from them, but what can you give them? And I think that's massive. And I think whether that's giving time for free, whether that's giving ideas, whether that's whatever it may be, how can you share and how can you add value? And I think if you live in that world, then I think you will move forward pretty quickly. I think of somebody like, I think Jack Rolfe's done a fantastic job with his match play cards and I think the way he's kind of built his social and stuff and the way he's connected with people and wants to share, I think has been a real part of that. And I think that's been really big in his kind of growth as influence is not the right word, but you know what I mean? Like as somebody who is out there in the social media and people recognize the name and understand, I think he's done that very well. So yeah, I think how can you share information? How can you add value? Not how can you take all the time. So
I also think it's important when you share content to think as widely as you can, to think that you can share it to as many people as possible. Because as you said, the algorithms work in a way that you see more what you're already seeing, so you can feel inside of a bubble already. So when you share, you have to think people are not gonna share, not gonna think, or not gonna share the same things as you. So think widely and think as many people as you can.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's okay to, and I've had a conversation with somebody about this recently. I think, well, it was actually with you guys about it's really important that actually you can have two people say very, very similar things. And that's like, not just say, okay, well, they've spoken about X. That means I can't go anywhere near it. Actually, I think it's really important. If you've got a similar idea, put your idea out there as well, because it's not going to, I'm going to say something and you three are going to say something, and it's all going to come across very differently because we have our own backgrounds and voices and opinions and thoughts. So just because you said something about a topic or something, that doesn't stop you from also sharing that. I think carbon copy is a very different thing. So if you literally like copy it exactly the same, that's an issue. But if if somebody's saying about something, say about it as well. Like we were saying about this, like Just Don't Coach guy, he's doing technical skills videos. Jimmy Colnane, who I also had on my podcast recently, has done technical videos.
Yeah.
I've got a log of technical videos which I'm recording and getting prepared as well.
Yeah.
All three will be very different. You could argue that self-pass stuff is a technical skills video, because the amount of times you see the kids and myself try and do those things, like
no shame. There's no shame in that.
So I'm still practicing, and I'm still a big kid at heart. So I definitely want to be able to do all the skills. But I think put it out there. The other thing I kind of want to stress is done is better than perfect. I think you're better off getting something, get it done, get it out there. Okay, it may not be 100% right, but if it's out there, it's doing something. And there's plenty of stuff which I've posted where I look back and I'm like, oh my God, that's awful. Like, I was looking back through my Instagram today, Neil was coming on. I was like, okay, let's go through. Have I been consistent in what I'm preaching? And I'd like to say I'm pretty consistent across the Instagram. Obviously between post 1 and post 500, 600, whatever we're on now, they do look different, but the thread is still the same. But some of the stuff I look back, I'm like, that's horrible. But at the time, it was right, and it was what I knew, and it's out there. You don't can't live in the, oh, well, people may not like it. No one's going to like everything. You just got to get stuff out there to start.
Mike, can I have a question for you that is not to change the tone of our talk, but we are talking mostly about benefits and advantages of and how to use social media in the best way possible. But I think I had briefly this conversation with you in the past, and we are also involved in some online coaching education. And for me, sports is a bit different from business or other areas where there is a huge technological advance acceleration, especially in this last couple of months. But in sports, like, we don't live only for sharing information. The real world is out there in the pitch, and the real world is dealing with real people and improving athletes and so on. So for me, the question now to summarize is, what are the threats also, and where can social media affect you as a coach? You understand? So where is it negative? Where it becomes negative for you as a coach as well?
I think potential negative is you think that you should coach in certain ways, or you should act in certain ways because you've seen somebody say something on Twitter, or you feel scared to do something because you've seen somebody said certain things on social. And I think you still have to go out and make mistakes and be your own coach. Don't fall into a mold which isn't you. I'll totally put my hand up and say, as a young coach starting out, I sat very much in a mold of what was happening at the time, and I was wanting to progress my career, and I you know, you kind of think, oh, well, if I step out of line too far, is that going to affect me? You know, people seeing me and this, that, and the other. And I think that you still need to take a look at it and be like, is this for me? Funny, I was talking on a culture workshop the other day and talking about the, you know, now, later, never. You know, what is being said that affects you now, and what can you use as a coach now? What can you use as a coach later? So actually, you like the idea of it, but you need to go away and play with it and tweak it and adjust it. And what are you looking at being like, that's not me? And actually, if that's not you and that's a never category, then you have to be able to close it, leave it, and walk away, and not let it sit in the back of your head. Because if it sits in the back of your head and keeps going at you, that's actually sitting in the later category, not the never. So I know, and you know, it's experience, and even some stuff I'll see and I'll get riled up about, you know, get cross about something because I've read something or disagreed, but I need to just, and I've had to then go, okay, no, that's never.
Yeah.
Like, that's a never thing.
Yeah,
I don't agree with it. It's not, I don't want it to affect my coaching, so I'm going to go back to my other stuff and take that on board. And I think with the amount of education, the boom in online education over the last couple of months due to COVID, I think there's so much information that coaches really, before they get back on a pitch, need to really go back through and be like, okay, I can use this. This isn't relevant. That's way too far. And filter it down, because otherwise, you know, everyone's going to have this a million one, and the players will be like, what is going on? Because there's just going to be so many things flying at the players.
Too much information paralyzed.
Yeah, 100%. And I think just take what's right for you in your arena that you're in. And for you as a coach at that moment in time. And that's where I think the later thing is so important. I mean, I've got my notebook, which I've got probably 10 which I'm working through at any one time for different things, because I know actually I want to be able to come back to it. And I think having a notebook is really valuable, because I can scribble all over it, draw my diagrams and stuff, and then I can come back to it later. So if I want to go back to stuff at my club from 4 years ago, I just pull that notebook out and I can flick through it, and it's there. So I think that's a nice thing to be able to work through. I know it's not social, but it's still a way to filter the social at times.
But I think it also applies to social media and branding, because when you think about why am I doing this, or when you try to have like a critical approach, it's better for you as a person and for you as a brand. So if you think why I'm having this on the later or on the never or right now, you have to think why I'm putting this on this category. So I think it's better if you step back.
Oh, 100%. And I think that's why Sport 101 is on TikTok. I've posted nothing, and because I'm not ready to, I don't understand it well enough yet to dive into it.
Cool.
I think when I understand the platform better and I understand the language that we go back to earlier, I will go into it, because it's where people are communicating. And I think people can't be like snobbish, like look down at other things and be like, oh, well, you know, that doesn't relate to me. It's actually, you know, if we look back, this is going to age me a little bit. If we look back to MySpace, you know, going back, and actually that was where people communicated.
Wow, that is ancient. That's last century, man.
But you know, I listen to a lot of people outside of hockey, and I think it helps keep me kind of sane and fresh. And I listen to a guy called Gary Vaynerchuk, and his whole thesis is around you talk to their communication tools. As much as a phone is a communication tool for me to talk to somebody else, they are communication platforms, and you can't get too proud or too stuck on one or the other, because you need to understand, okay, well, who's listening on this platform? And I'm then going to be able to talk to them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real skill.
Should coaches use social media as a communication platform with their players, and how?
I think if you look at someone like Bucky's first team, I think they use it. I know Zach's not a big player in that, but actually their team promotes what that team's about, which then can help people want to join that team. You look at Mannheim from the EHL last year. I know that's not a coach, but you look at what they did and the level of the video and the color and the music and the feel of the whole thing. That for me stepped up a game level, which I've not seen in hockey. I follow a lot of guys on YouTube who are like cinematographers and photographers and things like that. So I've seen that style, but not in the hockey world. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, this is really cool. And it made me think, okay, Mannheim is serious about like moving things forwards and doing things properly. And so I think as a coach, you can use it as a way of expressing, like we said earlier about don't just like, he's using it as a way to express himself and express his opinions. And I think that's then going to potentially, if you then attach that to your team that you're working with, that then can draw people into that team. And like Bernardo said, it's an art, like it's communication. And if you look at it in certain ways, it's also an art form. Is that kind of, does that answer that question?
And to the question from Ernst, Ernst, but just before you finish your answer, I think, I don't know, but I expect also from Ernst, the question is also like in UK, there are a lot of restrictions in terms of coaches communicating with especially youth players via social media. And whereas in other countries like Germany or Netherlands or Belgium or Spain, it might be one of the main communication channels with the players. You know, maybe you have a Facebook group or you communicate, you have a Instagram page of your team or something like that. So it will be also interesting to know your experience, because you have worked abroad and then you are mostly working in UK. So how are the different realities? What is more effective or equally effective?
Yeah, I think for me, it's making sure if you've got youth that you communicate to the parents and that they understand how you're going to communicate to the players. So if it's known that within your team you're using WhatsApp to speak to players, then parents need to be aware of that. If parents want to join the WhatsApp group, then they're welcome to. If parents, parents should really be on WhatsApp groups for U18s, but there has to be an understanding. Okay, what is the channel you want to use, and how then does that player fit into it as an under 18? But also, like my initial point, and there's no really other point. Like you have to communicate to the parents, and the parents need to understand what's going on in that. I think it can be if you're using something like Coach Logic or Huddle or something like that, that could be your communication tool, and then the parents can be on there as well. I think the beauty of having the various different technologies, that's a good way to be able to do that, I think.
Sergio, I would like to know from you, Sergio, you coach the under 14 team in Spain. How do you communicate as a coach with your team?
Mostly WhatsApp, but I think this also depends a lot on opinions. I think as a coach, like you should have your WhatsApp group and with the parents as well, individually, as with your players. But I don't like to think that every team has to have an Instagram account and maybe it's one only for the club and that's it. Like it's sometimes you don't have to be everywhere. Like it's not to do something if you're gonna do it so bad that it's going to be a bad reflection of the image of the club. So
also,
it's very like, okay, just this, but this is how I communicate and just one way.
100%. And I think that's where I think we talk about Buckingham Ladies first team and their kind of separate Instagram. I also believe that if you're sitting in a club as a team, there shouldn't be I don't like it when I see like a hockey club men's Instagram and then a hockey club women's, and then there are separate team ones within that, and you're like, well, who do I, like you say, who do I talk to? Because it's communication. Like, what's the message? Whereas I think the clubs that do really well, they have their social media account, and then it's consistent. And I think from your point of view, I think if you're communicating with your team, I think like exactly as you, I completely agree. It needs to be streamlined so they know, okay, it's going to be all through Coach Logic, or it's going to be all through WhatsApp, or it's going to be all through Facebook. So then there's not the kind of divergence going on and people miss information and what's going on.
And also because you see that people a lot, so you don't need to have like that funny or distended type of conversation because you already have it in the pitch or during some break. So you don't need that as a tool.
Yeah, and I am an advocate as well of a players group and a players and staff group, because we've all been on WhatsApp groups where you see stuff and you're like, I don't need to know this. There is information going on out there. I don't need to know.
Like, it's good for them to have like an separated group or whatever, a platform in which they can express without thinking, oh, there's an adult seeing this.
100%. And this goes right back to what we were talking about at the beginning. Who is in your bubble of communication, and have you got the trust that you can be fully expressive in that, and that's then not going to go elsewhere where you don't want it to be seen. I had a really good piece of advice years and years ago, good friend of mine, and he said, and this was talking about in the real world, and actually it fits really nicely to this, and he was saying, if you are walking into a building and it's one of those revolving doors and you don't see fully the person that's on the other side and you're being silly and you stop the door or you do something, that person the next day could be interviewing you and you don't know. So you need to think about how you behave and how you act and how you are, because you never know where that next interview could be. So, and I think that's kind of stuck with me, and I think is the way I like to think that I come across in the world, is this is who I am, and I want to make sure that I'm always building bridges and not burning them. And I think that's massive.
Well, it sounds like a great closing message. Well, for me, we would stay here 1 hour more. I think in terms of timing, this went really quick, if I'm honest. I don't know, Ernst, you are the moderator.
No, I think it was a very good message to end up with. Maybe one last question for Mike. Can you give 3 pieces of advice for coaches to do or not to do on social media?
Share, add value, be true to yourself.